I'm gonna draw your favorite horror movie slashers in their own splash art. I'm Man217, and for those of you who don't know, splash art is a type of art popularized by video games, in particular, League of Legends. Splash art is the art that you see during the loading screens. These drawings are usually awesome and pretty epic. Explosion. So the first thing I want to point out is the canvas size that I am using. I am using CinemaScope. Now this is a problem for me because I've never used this type of canvas before. It's very wide and it makes it look cinematic. But I gotta make sure that I use the entire canvas. So I need to have things on both sides of the far end of the canvas, which is a problem because I kind of want the character to be the only focus in the shot. But we're gonna try to figure that out. Also, when I was looking at a lot of splash art, I noticed that most of the time the poses are very dynamic. They're not stiff, just standing there doing nothing, because that's boring. You need something cool happening. So for Michael Myers, I'm gonna have him in this cool attacking pose. Like if he has his sister Jamie Lee Curtis right in his grasp and she's about to get got. Not to be confused with got. Perverts. So I continue to draw Michael Myers, who is my absolute favorite slasher. Now, Michael Myers or Halloween is not my favorite slasher movie. I love Scream, but Michael Myers is definitely my favorite slasher villain. So I gotta make sure I do him justice. Now, I will admit the new Michael Myers, where he kinda knows MMA and he fights all the firefighters and the whole town is attacking him and he just pulls out his black belt and just kicks their butt. I didn't like that. I do want to show you guys this one compositional trick. This is the golden ratio. The golden ratio is this swirl that makes it that everything is very well spaced and it's very pleasing to the eye. It happens naturally in nature. A lot of artists started to notice this and use this in their artwork. So I'm gonna do it now too. So now that I drew out this very badly golden ratio, I wanna make my artwork follow that ratio as well. So I'm gonna change the lines for the seams of the pants. I wanted to match that swooping angle of the golden ratio. You don't have to do this again. This is up to you. This is just a compositional trick that I learned and it's a very subtle thing, but the masters did it. And I wanna be a master. When coloring Michael Myers, I use his basic colors, but I don't use a pure white for the mask. I like to use an off-white color when I'm using white. I don't oftentimes use white in my artwork. I'm gonna use a cool white. And honestly, I want the whole image to be more on the cool side. And I don't mean cool like sunglasses and toothpicks. I mean cool as in the cool colors of blue and not the warm colors like red. We need bluish tones and I'm gonna tell you why later. I add a quick background using the lasso tool to make basic shapes. Now when I'm doing my backgrounds, I don't normally do inks. Sometimes I do depending on what I'm drawing in the background, like a cityscape, skyscrapers. Sometimes if I want it to be very detailed, I'll add my inks. But in most cases, I just use the lasso tool and I want it to look like lineless art in the background. That's just my style. The main focus in the front, the characters are inked and the scenery sometimes lineless art. And I know it doesn't look like much now, it's very sloppy, I'm not really paying too much attention to it, and that's because I'm gonna blur it out anyway. I'm gonna use Gaussian blur to make it out of focus, to make sure that Michael is the main focus of the image. He's the star of the show. Wait, am I the star of the show? I'm the star of the show. Don't blur me out. I also add some orange to contrast those cool colors, and it's Halloween. You know, Michael likes to do his bad stuff on Halloween. So I add some orange light to the background and some jack-o'-lanterns. I start to render Michael Myers and I use a combination of cel-shaded elements and more blended look. That is just my style, that's how I like to render. And I start adding some blood spatter to the image because he is a murderer, bad guy. So I add that blood in the same shape as the golden ratio. This helps your eye follow where it needs to go to get to the main focus, Michael Myers. Following that paint splatter or that blood spatter shows and trains your viewer's eyes to look at what you want them to look at. And here it is, Michael Myers splash art. I think it looks great and it looks so epic. Next, I'm gonna draw Freddy Krueger. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not really a big fan of Freddy. I don't really care for the Freddy Krueger movies. I've maybe seen 2, 3 if you count Freddy vs. Jason. And I do enjoy them, it's just the dreamscape thing, I never really liked it. But I do love his character design, his burnt look, his sweater, and also that awesome glove. Also, I really like fedoras. I think I can't pull them off, but I love them. Now, drawing a splash art of him was kind of problematic for me because I hate drawing hands. And what's Freddy Krueger without his glove? I had to draw that hand. So I worked through it, I tried and tried and tried, and I got a hand that I sort of like. Sometimes I do tricks like putting their hands behind their back or behind an element or behind another character because I don't want to draw the hand. But what is Freddy Krueger without his glove? Just a burned guy with a cool hat. Another thing I want to mention is that drawing his burnt face, his burnt texture was intimidating to me because I really didn't know how to tackle it. So when I did the inking, I made these shapes on his face. I used those shapes to show that I want those spots to be a more fleshy color. I gave him a very basic pose. I think it could have been a little bit more dynamic, but I really just wanted to showcase that hand. Now we get to the colors, and as you can see, I separate the two colors of his skin into different layers. I have the regular skin and then those splotchy little fleshy colors. I color in his sweater, which is easy. He has Christmassy colors, red and green, which are also complementary colors which help it pop. I put in a blue background, but then I quickly changed it to more of a sunset look. This makes me think of more of a dreamy landscape. I also add in these swirling clouds in the shape of that golden ratio. I also wanted to make sure that this scene is more warm. That is the opposite of what I did with Michael Myers. I get a batarang, yes, you heard that right, a batarang, and I use that shape to kind of cut off the pieces of the moon to make it look more dreamy and fake. Now getting to the rendering, I needed to make sure that I get that burnt texture, so I used a watercolor brush from Clip Studio to get a cool texture. I used a multiply layer set to 50% opacity and started painting away. The brush I used really brought out that nice cool burnt texture, and I was intimidated for nothing. Honestly, I just needed a plan. I didn't know how to tackle it, but once I realized I can use the watercolor brushes to get that look, then everything was pretty much smooth sailing. I continued rendering the rest of the character. His sweater was pretty easy to render as well. I used some texture in some parts because it's a fuzzy sweater, but other than that, then my rendering was pretty much the same as usual. I get rid of those harsh black lines by making a clipping mask and coloring it with the color that is closest to. I like to have some of my work look like lineless art and then some parts show those lines. Again, that is just my style choice. You can try it if you like it or don't. I can't tell you what to do. Again, I used the golden ratio to put some paint spatter on the screen to make it look more dynamic and cool and cinematic. I love the way he came out, and honestly, he was the scariest for me to draw, and I'm very happy. But now we have to draw his arch nemesis, Jason Voorhees. I am a big fan of the Jason movies, especially the original ones, but there is like a million now, and some of them I can't really watch, like when he went to space. I don't know why they did that. Why did Jason become an astronaut? But that's okay, because even the people from Fast and the Furious went to space and everybody loved that, right? When I'm sketching him, I want to make sure I showcase that machete. He has the biggest weapon of all the slashers I've drawn so far, and I really want to showcase that machete. I had a lot of trouble drawing his pose, but I kept fiddling with it and fiddling with it and fiddling with it, and we got something that I kind of like. I would have liked for it to be a little bit more dynamic, but with these characters, they're very stiff, and I don't want to draw a pose that is not realistic for the character. They kind of just walk very slow and just start to stab things. And for his background, I did something a little bit different. I want to show you guys a variety of techniques. For this one, I found a very cool picture on Pexel, and I just copied and pasted it into my background. I used Gaussian blur to make it a little bit more blurry, and I also used filter gallery paint daubs, I believe it's called. And it kind of makes it look a little bit more painterly because you want to make it look more like your own. I added some foliage, some bushes to the image, and some ink lines to the tent. Again, you don't want to use the image exactly as it is because if somebody else used it, then you're gonna have pretty much the same drawing as the other artist, at least the same background. So you want to make it your own as much as you can. Now, I didn't make that many changes to it because I'm gonna just blur it out anyway, and I just wanted to show you this technique. But I picked this image in particular because of that tent, because we know that Jason loves to attack campers. That's why I never joined the Boy Scouts. I'm not scared of bears. I know how to do that circle thing that SpongeBob taught us. I'm scared of Jason. Now when I'm coloring Jason, I had some problems with the rendering because of his jacket. His jacket is kind of two-tone because of how dirty it is. It has a lot of grunge and a lot of grit to it. So I used a grunge brush on the jacket and I set another layer on top of it to multiply, lowered the transparency, and I did all the shadows on a multiply layer. And after I did the shadows, I made a new layer for more of the light in the character. And because I was using pictures that I found online and I was adding textures to the jacket, I wanted to add texture to his knife and make it look more real. So I got a metal texture and put it over his blade and it makes it pop even more. And although I had a lot of trouble drawing Jason for some reason, I thought that he would be the easiest to draw, but he gave me a lot of problems. I still love the way he came out. And if you look at them all together, you can see this beautiful artwork. Yes, the three of them come together to make an amazing artwork. As you can see, I have Michael in the middle with a more cool color palette. And then on top, you have Freddy, and on the bottom, you have Jason, which has a more warm color palette. That was on purpose. So I wanted the three of them to come together to make a whole new artwork. I actually love the way these came out. I do want to practice more with splash art. This was my first try, and I think I can learn some more if I try again. I think I need the poses to be more dynamic. And if you like this sort of thing, if you like challenges and spooky stuff, you can watch this video right here, where I draw all the Inktober prompts into one artwork. That was a fun challenge. Please subscribe if you like what you see, hit the bell and hit like. This really helps me out because I love doing this and I want to continue to do this, but I need your help. And if you help me, that would be awesome, I think. Thanks for watching.